We'll show you how I paint a realistic acrylic portrait using the glazing technique. To start off, putting a light glaze on the background using clear acrylic matte medium, and then after that I start filling in some details of the hat using ultramarine blue, and in the background I used kind of a brownish tone of raw umber dark, and we go over with another layer after the foreground details dry. Then we put in some details in the face and in the bandana or scarf. We go over the background again with another layer and just keep building up. In this technique we allow the light to shine through, so we go very faintly, covering the whole painting in its entirety again and again, almost like a Polaroid photo where it starts off very light and then gradually gets darker. Here we're putting in some detail in the eyes and the again in the scarf, the background, just working from foreground to background, foreground to background, and now adding some detail into the scarf and the eyes, and darkening the background again. We just keep working back and forth between those two elements. And then we're adding some tones into the face, skin tones, and some nuances in the value to build up form and dimension in the mustache and the lips. Slowly adding different details, but mostly wanting to build dimension by adding tones a little bit at a time. Also adding some pinkish tones to the cheeks and around the eyes, darkening the eyebrows just in certain spots to emphasize thicker areas and thinner areas. And then also smoothing it out with my hand a little bit just to make sure everything looks as realistic as possible. Adding some dark tones under the chin, emphasizing the kind of frontal flash light that's coming upon his face, and refining the eyes, the eyelashes, which basically are just a couple of thin lines with a raw umber dark. And then we go over the nose, and you can see I'm skipping all over, adding a few nuances here and there. This paint is very thin. I use a clear acrylic medium, and I thin it down to 30% translucency. Here I'm adding some details in the hat again and again, and we just work into the bib overalls that he's wearing, and just keep adding more details, mixing it up with small round brushes, flat brushes, adding details again to the hat. We go over with a larger flat brush to get some darker nuances, and then also adding in some of the thinner details as well, using the small 1/0 brush. Just make sure you get that brush to a point and get the paint very fluid. It makes a huge difference in getting the kind of detail you're going for. You see I'm just skipping around in a few different points over the face and getting some of those details within his clothing as well. I refine back and forth by working in the negative spaces as well as the positive spaces of those patterns within the scarf. And going back into the skin tones, adding a few little details, shadows under his nose, highlights in different spots. Once we get to the later stages in the painting, you can start adding a little more white to the mix to get the paint somewhat more opaque and get it a little bit smoother in tone. We're adding more details and shading to his clothing, just in a few little spots, and that's the key to realism, is varying your lines, varying the texture, getting darkness in just a few spots to emphasize those shadowed areas which don't cover the entire area of a face or of clothing. Back and forth, I'm just skipping around. We're getting very close to the end, just a few final touches, and we'll be able to call this painting done. Just a couple of spots here and there, highlights, just to finish it up and really give it that look of a photo. And then I sign it off and call it done. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you would like